Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join us on this epic story. Our story commences at the 4th Academy of Sioux City, where a platform stands before a gathering of students positioned in a magical circle. Shui Jinlong, the principal of the academy, solemnly declared that this day marked their transformation into inner world players. He explained that upon entering the formation, the system would reveal their class roles and talents. The students' destinies hinged on the outcome, as fate determined whether they would become legendary swordsmen, steadfast knights, stealthy assassins lurking in the shadows, or powerful mages. After conveying these details, the principal wished all the students good luck, emphasizing the pivotal nature of this moment. He then activated the transfer formation, causing the magic circle beneath the students to emanate a brilliant blue light. In the center of the circle stood our story's protagonist, Kiau, an ordinary student with an extraordinary secret. 18 years prior, he had reincarnated into this world and had eagerly awaited this day. The world he entered after his death was known as Kaiji Star, a parallel realm strikingly similar to Earth. However, one day, this artificially created parallel world descended upon Earth, triggering significant changes. The appearance of dungeons filled with formidable monsters was among the first transformations. These dungeons were impassable by regular individuals, but luckily, people began acquiring superpowers through the transfer formation upon reaching the age of 18. These powers enabled them to conquer dungeons, earn points by slaying monsters, and advance their levels. As they leveled up, they received attribute points to enhance their combat prowess. Returning to our hero's journey, upon activating the magic circle, he was transported to a mysterious dimension. In the next instant, a feminine voice greeted him and inquired about his desire to unveil his class. Without hesitation, he responded with a resolute yes. Internally, he felt a surge of anxiety, desperately hoping for a favorable class, as his entire future hinged upon this choice. After a brief loading period, a turquoise aura materialized around him, engulfing him like an intense flame. Within the aura, a skull with fiery eyes and mouth emerged. Shortly after, the system congratulated him on obtaining the hidden class. Overwhelmed with surprise and confusion, he stared at his now energy-brimming body. In the next moment, the system solemnly announced that he had been bestowed the coveted Necromancer class. This revelation unleashed a wave of emotions within our protagonist, for the Necromancer class was exceptionally rare, possessed by only a select few individuals worldwide. This class bestowed upon him the power to summon numerous first-class undead from the depths of hell with a single swing of his staff, an army under the summoner's control, as long as he possessed sufficient mana. Opening the status window to examine his characteristics, he opted to check his attributes first. Obtaining a hidden class meant he had to be stronger than others. Upon inspection, he discovered that his strength was 10, defense was 6, agility was 6, and health was 10. However, to his disappointment and despair, his spirit attribute was at 0. Panic set in as he clutched his head, sinking to his knees. He questioned how this could happen since attribute points were randomly assigned, including the class itself. The maximum value one could receive as a beginner was 10 points. Additionally, the spirit attribute was crucial for a mage, and not having it posed a mystery as to how he could fight. Kiau, on his knees, cried in despair when the system approached him and inquired if he would accept his talent's role. Having resigned himself to being a loser, he replied affirmatively, feeling doomed because even receiving an S-grade talent, considered the best, would be useless with his low-level spirit attribute. In the next moment, the talent roll commenced. An aura appeared around him, this time blue, followed by congratulations from the system. It informed him that he had acquired the talent called Brave Heart of a Magician, which granted 10 attribute points. The talent's detailed description stated that it had 2 effects, a passive skill that awarded attribute points for killing monsters with physical attacks, and an active effect that allowed the user to elevate other attribute values to match a specific attribute value. However, there were restrictions on the potent active effect, permitting its use only once and only for a single attribute. Our hero's eyes widened with surprise as he read this. His astonishment was justified, as obtaining free attribute points was nearly impossible without leveling up or rigorous training. With this passive skill, he could acquire attribute points, vital to him, simply by slaying enemies with physical attacks. Moreover, he could utilize the active effect once to raise his other attributes to the level of his highest one. If he were to raise all his attributes to 10 immediately, he would become an exceptional novice, destined for greatness. However, he realized it wouldn't be the wisest choice in the long run. Waiting for his strength to reach 1000 or even higher before using this skill could lead to unimaginable outcomes. After all, a necromancer with 100,000 points in each attribute would be an unstoppable force, capable of facing an entire army alone. Anticipating this, a smile formed on his face as he acknowledged that for now, the best course of action was to focus on increasing his strength, the attribute required for his passive skill. Doing so would enable him to swiftly accumulate numerous attribute points. Without hesitation, he clenched his fist and raised his hand, instructing the system to allocate 10 attribute points to strength. Examining his system status window once more, he noted that his strength now stood at 20 points. With that settled, he concluded that it was time to register and undertake the beginner's test, for only by completing it would he be considered successful. In the following moment, the system activated a teleportation mechanism that resembled a swirling water vortex, causing our protagonist to vanish. A moment later, he reappeared on a stone bridge, facing a portal. Standing near the portal was an elf girl. It turned out that she was his guide, and she introduced herself as Elaine. After the introduction, she asked if there was anything she could do to assist him. Taken aback by the girl's beauty and wondering if she was merely a non-player character, NPC, he replied that he had come to register and accept the beginner's task. Upon hearing this, she expressed her willingness to help and presented him with a gift box. Informing him that it was a beginner's gift, she encouraged him to open it. Inside the box, he found a book, a staff, and a cape. The cape automatically equipped itself on him, while the system congratulated him for obtaining the old robe, staff, and grimoire with the F-level skeleton summoning skill. Examining the items, he realized that the robe was merely an accessory and that the summoning skill was useless due to his low spirit level. However, the staff caught his attention as it appeared sturdy and could serve as a potent crushing weapon with his strength of 20 points. Curious about his beginner task, he inquired with the girl. She pointed towards the portal and explained that he had to escape from the misty cave. Cautioning him to be careful and not kill the skeletons, she emphasized finding the fastest way to escape. As she was about to provide further information, she was surprised to find no one around. Simultaneously, our protagonist stepped out of the portal, eager to explore the cave. The cave floor was littered with skulls and bones, creating a grim atmosphere. Soul-like blue lights floated in the air, adding to the ambiance. Only upon entering the cave did he recall the girl mentioning something else about the mission, but he couldn't remember the details. Dismissing it as a beginner task that shouldn't be too challenging, he was interrupted by the appearance of a skeleton behind him, charging with a dagger. Reacting swiftly, he turned around, prepared to fight. The system displayed information about the attacker, revealing it to be a level 1 skeleton soldier with 20 health and 5 strength. Brandishing his staff, he lunged at the skeleton, preventing it from getting too close. Striking first, he dealt a significant blow that instantly reduced the skeleton's health to 0, leaving behind a fading skull. Surprised at his ability to dispatch the enemy with a single blow, he sarcastically remarked on the difficulty of not being able to use magic. The system congratulated him for killing the skeleton with a physical attack, rewarding him with 1 attribute point and 3 experience points. Furthermore, he received an additional passive skill of A rank called Miracle of Might as a reward for killing a monster with a single blow for the first time. This skill doubled the points he had already invested in his strength attribute. He was pleasantly surprised by obtaining such a powerful skill. Examining his status window, he noticed an icon indicating the doubling effect next to his strength attribute. This led him to the realization that strength determined the damage he dealt, while defense determined the amount of damage reduced. Therefore, if his opponent had no defense, he could now inflict 42 points of damage in a single hit, which was incredibly impressive. However, his attention was abruptly diverted by a noise emanating from numerous bony hands emerging from the ground, all belonging to the same skeletons. Recognizing the paramount importance of his task, he decided to focus on it entirely. In the next instant, a horde of hostile skeleton warriors burst forth from the ground and rushed towards him. Undeterred by the imminent threat of their lethal blades, he remained composed, patiently awaiting the opportune moment. And in that very next instant, the moment arrived. Swinging his staff, he obliterated 4 skeletons simultaneously with a single blow, inflicting 20 damage to each. The decapitated heads of the skeletons fell to the ground, still engulfed in green flames. He received a notification stating that for killing 4 skeleton warriors with a physical attack, he earned 4 attribute points and 12 experience points. In fact, these experience points resulted in his level increasing, granting him an additional 5 attribute points as a reward. Combining these points with the ones he had already received for killing skeletons, he now possessed a total of 30 points in strength, an unbelievably high amount. Normally, beginners would be considered geniuses if they received 10 points in any attribute. However, he felt a lingering concern about the ease of leveling up by killing skeletons. As if reading his thoughts, it was no ordinary skeleton that emerged from the ground this time. Instead, it was an imposing skeleton armed with a large shield and a spear. This formidable adversary was a level 3 skeleton captain, boasting 50 health points, 15 strength, and 20 defense. Despite the previous skeletons' actions, their agility remained lacking. Assessing the opponent's strength, he realized he would be in trouble if he received even a single hit. Drawing his staff, he acknowledged that it didn't matter since he still had 1 point in dexterity, ensuring victory if he struck first. Without hesitation, he launched an attack, but the skeleton effortlessly blocked it with his shield. In the following moment, the skeleton swiftly counterattacked, attempting to strike our hero with his spear, which he successfully evaded. The skeleton's swift actions caught him off guard, as he had never anticipated such a rapid counterattack. However, in the brief interval before the skeleton could launch another strike, seizing the opportunity presented by his opponent's momentary delay, our hero successfully executed an attack. Although it didn't cause any damage, it created an opening for another strike. Leaping into the air and issuing a fierce cry to distract his opponent, he landed a powerful blow directly on the skeleton captain's head, instantly draining its 50 health points and killing it. Upon receiving a notification from the system confirming his victory over the skeleton captain, he earned 3 attribute points and 10 experience points. He acknowledged that this opponent was truly formidable, which made him wonder how others had managed to deal with it. However, his immediate concern was the glowing yellow light sphere that fell out from the skeleton captain's demise. Having been informed by the headmaster that defeated monsters had a chance of dropping a core containing a random reward, he recognized the sphere's significance. Upon opening it, he obtained a disposable D-ranked skeleton fist set, which granted a 100% critical strike chance. Although disappointed by its disposable nature, he continued to be interrupted by more skeletons emerging from the ground. While dispatching them was not challenging, the attribute points they provided were crucial. Despite his strength, he had to remain cautious as the number of enemies increased. At level 2, with only 20 health points, a single mistake could cost him his life. Without a moment's respite, he swiftly engaged the skeletons, striking them with his staff, proving to be deadly for them. After annihilating 5 skeletons, he leveled up once again, gaining 10 attribute points this time. As he finished off the skeletons, he reflected on how relatively easy it had been due to the skeletons' limited dexterity. However, he realized that it didn't matter now, as he had leveled up again and needed to check his status window. Meanwhile, outside the school cave, while the protagonist battled the monsters, the students who had successfully passed the beginner's test engaged in joyful discussions about the classes they had obtained. Despite their excitement, some students wondered why the principal had yet to announce graduation and if anyone had failed such a seemingly simple task in such a short time. Some even mocked the idea of failing when the skeletons inside were slow and fleeing from them posed no significant challenge. Among the students, one individual stood anxiously, awaiting our hero's emergence and growing concerned about his well-being. This same person stood inside the cave, pondering why the system hadn't indicated task completion and whether it was because he hadn't yet killed all the skeletons. Suddenly, a cold voice filled with anger confronted him, immediately putting our hero on guard, as the owner of such a menacing voice was capable of anything. Skulls and bones scattered across the floor began levitating under an unseen force, converging in one location. Within seconds, a bright green flame erupted from the head of the amalgamation, instilling shock and fear in our hero. A short while later, he found himself confronted by an undeniably formidable opponent. This opponent, known as the Skeleton King, was not only larger but also possessed 4 arms, each wielding a weapon. In an instant, the Skeleton King emitted a bone-chilling roar, signaling its status as a level 10 boss. Despite sustaining some injuries, it boasted an impressive 400 health points, along with a strength of 45 and a defense of 60. Furthermore, like the other skeletons, it possessed a single point in agility, and it even had a few skills. As he absorbed this information about the monster, he couldn't help but feel puzzled and wondered how a beginner's task could involve facing a boss of this magnitude. Nevertheless, he had no time to dwell on it as the Skeleton King raised its massive weapon and charged at him. The attack was powerful and destructive, but fortunately, it was slow enough for our hero to evade. He realized how fortunate he was to have dodged it, as a direct hit would have undoubtedly been fatal. Despite the formidable strength of his opponent, the Skeleton King lacked agility, which remained our hero's sole advantage. Additionally, the boss's defense rating of 60 suggested that his attacks might not be potent enough to penetrate and deal significant damage. Nevertheless, our hero decided to take a chance and swiftly rushed towards the enemy, maneuvering with great speed. With lightning-like swiftness, he delivered a quick strike with his staff, resulting in a modest 32 points of damage. Although the attack had some effect, it didn't yield the substantial damage he had hoped for. Nonetheless, he remained determined, realizing that if he could successfully land more than 10 hits on the Skeleton King, he could defeat him. Utilizing his agility skill, he unleashed a flurry of blows, each strike finding its mark and dealing 32 damage. The unexpected barrage of attacks caught the Skeleton King off guard, causing it to stagger and collapse to the ground, raising clouds of dust. Witnessing the boss's helplessness, our hero couldn't help but wonder if this intimidating figure was merely meant to frighten people. With the boss's health reduced to a mere 200 points and victory seemingly within reach, he anticipated the imminent conclusion of the battle. However, it soon became apparent that the situation was not so straightforward. To his surprise, the boss rose with renewed vigor, engulfed in a bright green flame, and bellowed in fury. He expressed his defense of the Cave of Mist throughout the years and his disbelief at encountering a player who had successfully made their way through. Determined not to let such an impudent individual escape alive, he resolved to retaliate. As our hero retreated, he noticed the skeleton boss had grown stronger. The boss swiftly charged toward him with newfound speed, leaving our hero horrified by the realization that the enemy had not only become stronger but also faster. Despite the increased difficulty, he managed to evade the next lethal strike and leapt back to a safe distance. With a direct attack seemingly impossible, he pondered his limited options and considered how he could restrict the boss's movements. However, the solution presented itself when the skeleton charged towards him in attack. He noticed a fragile stone pillar nearby and quickly realized that he could use it to damage the skeleton and restrict its movements. After another attempted attack, he lured the skeleton boss closer to the column, taking advantage of its blind rage. Unaware of the trap, the skeleton rushed in for another attack. Kiau further taunted him, saying, "Come at me, you big blockhead." Enraged by the insult, the skeleton boss roared and unleashed its full power, intending to overpower him. Kiau narrowly dodged the blow, but this time, he wasn't as successful as before. Even the slightest scratch from the skeleton's strike dealt a significant 26 points of damage and knocked him back. The main force of the attack hit the stone column, causing it to suffer damage. Overwhelmed by the pain, the protagonist couldn't believe that a simple scratch had brought his health down to a dangerously low level, leaving him with only 4 points out of 30. The enraged skeleton was determined to finish off the wounded and impudent man. Kiau was prepared to meet his end, his face contorted with fear. However, his plan still worked, and the skeleton was forced to turn around when it heard the sound of falling stones. The stone column couldn't withstand the final blow and began to crumble, threatening to collapse onto the skeleton boss. Unable to get far enough away, the boss was pelted with a barrage of stones, dealing 70 points of damage in one go. Now, the wounded Skeleton King had only 129 health points remaining out of 500. Kiau realized that he couldn't sustain this for much longer and needed to end it quickly before the skeleton regained its strength. Determined to deliver a decisive blow, he leapt high above the boss and utilized the skeleton boxing glove to amplify his next attack. Unfortunately, the item was disposable, but it proved to be incredibly useful as it guaranteed a critical hit with the next strike. After using the glove, Kiau was determined not to miss his final opportunity. The skeleton boss couldn't believe that this young upstart was about to end its years-long reign in the cave. The protagonist's punch was unbelievably powerful, blowing off the skeleton's head along with its remaining life points. Only the remnants of the green cursed flame lingered among the rocks. Immediately after, a blue portal and information windows appeared in front of our hero, congratulating him on completing the beginner's quest, Escape from the Cave of Mist. But in addition to this expected notification, he was also praised for being the first to defeat the cave's boss, the Skeleton King. As a reward, he received 30 additional attribute points. The remnants of the flame behind the skeleton's back glowed and formed a core. However, the rewards didn't end there, as numerous other information windows appeared, indicating that he would receive 10 more attribute points for defeating the skeleton boss in melee combat, as well as 50 experience points. Additionally, he was rewarded with 2 new levels, bringing his character to level 5. Kiau approached the core, reaching out his hand to open it, still in disbelief over his success and luck. Not only had he defeated the boss first, but he also obtained the equipment dropped by the boss. The reward for being the first to defeat the boss was the Ring of the Skeleton King, a valuable item that increased the player's damage by 50% after their initial attack. The item had a recharge time of 24 hours and, importantly, had no restrictions on its use. Upon seeing the ring, the protagonist thought it was a decent item. Although not as powerful as the skeleton boxing glove, it had the advantage of being usable at all times. Additionally, he could sell it for a high price due to its rarity. Admiring the precious item he had obtained, he shifted his attention to the notifications. To his surprise, he discovered that he was the first player to defeat the boss. This led him to wonder if no one else had managed to defeat the Skeleton King until now. He briefly pondered how the other students had passed the test, but quickly dismissed the thought and decided to leave the cave and complete the challenges initially planned. As a result of successfully completing the first beginner's challenge, he reached level 5 and achieved a power level of 76, establishing himself as a formidable player. He also obtained the talent, Mag's Brave Heart, the skill, Muscle Creates Miracles, and the equipment, Ring of the Skeleton King. When he exited the portal, it closed behind him, indicating that he was the last student to complete the challenge. As soon as he appeared, his friend Yang Shangdi enthusiastically embraced him, nearly knocking him over. Kiau shouted indignantly and pushed him away, but Yang Shangdi persisted in his joy and inquired about what had happened and why he took so long to complete the beginner's task. Kiau initially didn't believe his friend's words and the fact that all the students had completed the mission so quickly and left the portal. Yang Shangdi informed him that it had been 3 hours since the last person came out. Kiau was surprised by their speed but changed the subject by asking about his friend's role. Eager to share, Yang Shangdi proudly announced that he had become a mage and jokingly referenced Lord Voldemort and his Avada Kedavra spell. Observing his friend's elevated mood, the protagonist couldn't believe they were in the same world during the trial. It seemed like Yang Shangdi had an easy time. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a smug individual who came to mock Kiau for being the last to emerge. This person, Ma Fei, was not an ordinary student, he was a class monitor. With an arrogant demeanor, Ma Fei belittled Kiau, calling him nothing more than an embroidered pillow, and asserting that looking cute wouldn't help him in a world where talent mattered most. Finally, Ma asked if Kiau knew his own role. Kiau looked at him and wondered why Ma Fei enjoyed picking fights with him. Despite his sarcastic comments, Kiau decided to ignore him to avoid trouble. Observing that all the students had passed the test, the principal announced that everyone was now officially enrolled in the other world. He congratulated them and informed them that the entire class would participate in beginner training the following day. He then invited everyone to introduce themselves, share their roles, and discuss their talents in order to get to know each other better. Amidst the crowd of students, there were both joyful and disappointed shouts as everyone revealed their roles and talents. Some became soldiers, others became assassins, and a few were disappointed with their low-ranked talents despite having promising roles. One girl, Zhao Ziyu, became a mage and healer, attracting the attention of male students with her attractive appearance. She even had a fan club that affectionately called her Nanny, not because of her healing abilities, but for other reasons. Another girl, Lu, despite her frail physique, obtained the role of a paladin, known as a meat shield, and a B-rank talent. With her high defense stats and role, she became a strong player and a desirable teammate. The next student was Ma Fei, who already familiar to the others. He had the role of a swordsman, an A-rank talent, and excelled in all skills. His confident and strong appearance made others consider him lucky to have such skills. The students were surprised by his role and performance, as the swordsman role was highly powerful in this world. Some even believed that Ma Fei was blessed by the heavens. Observing the students, the principal thought that this batch showed great potential, with many highly ranked talents and capable individuals who could be considered geniuses. Finally, it was Kiau Yu's turn. Surrounded by a dark flame aura, he announced that he had become a necromancer. However, his self-confidence vanished when he hesitated to reveal his talent, explaining that it wasn't convenient at the moment. He believed that it was best if others didn't know about his talent. To his surprise, no one seemed to care. However, the principal was thrilled that one of his students had obtained a rare hidden role. The other students were equally astonished, struggling to find words to express their surprise. One student even recalled a story about a necromancer who single-handedly wiped out another union. Ma Fei, who had previously teased Kiau Yu, became tense and couldn't believe it. However, he reassured himself that despite being a hidden role, necromancers had their disadvantages. Mages were known for their fragility, and necromancers were even more vulnerable, spending years in dungeons establishing connections with the undead. Furthermore, summoning spells took a considerable amount of time, making them susceptible in one-on-one battles without teammates for protection. Assassins, swordsmen, and similar attack-focused roles were considered the natural enemies of necromancers. Ma Fei looked at Kiau Yu with a smug smile, noticing that he hadn't mentioned his talent and rank. This led him to believe that Kiau Yu's talent was of low level, causing him embarrassment. However, the other students weren't envious but rather surprised by Kiau Yu's reserved and tactful demeanor. Kiau Yu's behavior left everyone suggesting that this difference in composure must be the mark of a genius compared to an ordinary person. His grounded personality made them certain that they wouldn't have remained so calm if they had obtained a hidden role. However, none of them knew the true reason behind his demeanor and the troubling thoughts swirling in his mind. Xiaoyu could only imagine the chaos that would unfold when everyone discovered a necromancer who couldn't cast a single spell and was only slightly physically stronger than the others. Kiau Yu didn't even know if he would be able to defend himself during beginner training, so he saw no reason to make a big fuss. He was overwhelmed with questions and had very few answers. Meanwhile, the headmaster had confidence in Kiau Yu's future success and believed he would be able to enter the world's best universities after completing beginner training. Once everyone finished introducing themselves and revealing their roles and talents, the headmaster announced the end of the day, instructing everyone to go home, rest, and prepare for the upcoming beginner training. Kiau Yu headed home but was immediately approached by his friend Yang Shangdi, who marveled at the protagonist's incredible role. Yang Shangdi even felt a twinge of disappointment that he himself didn't become a necromancer. Nonetheless, he reassured himself that he wasn't too bad either, boasting about his 8 spirit points. After talking about his own attributes, suggesting that it couldn't be that bad. Kiau Yu, remembering his embarrassing 0 in the spirit characteristic, responded by saying that hard work can compensate for clumsiness. At the same time, he believed that his friend, who only had single-digit stats, paled in comparison to him with his 76 points in strength. It wasn't as dire as he initially thought. Finally, Kiau Yu arrived home and loudly exclaimed, "I'm home," hoping for a response from someone. However, the house was silent and empty. It was the home his parents had left behind when they disappeared. Kiau Yu always said, "I'm home," upon returning, yearning for someone to answer him. In his memories, his parents would reply with the same phrase whenever they returned, and he wanted to emulate them. Unfortunately, he could only reminisce about them, with only a single picture of them together remaining. He remembered his parents as loving and kind people, and as a young boy, he believed he was the happiest child in the world. However, when he was 6 years old, his parents abruptly packed up and told him they had important matters to attend to in the capital. After that, he never saw them again. They vanished mysteriously, leaving Kiau Yu as an orphan. Looking at the photo now, he realized it had been 12 years since their disappearance. He wondered where they could have gone. Determined to uncover the truth behind his parents' vanishing, he was resolved to enter the university in the capital. The following day, our protagonist and the rest of the students gathered at the practice location for beginners. Standing before them was the principal, who made a serious and somber request. In a grave voice, he asked them to remember that if they realized they couldn't handle it, they should immediately retreat. After all, even if they failed the training, it was still preferable to risking their lives. This statement frightened the students, but the principal reassured them that there was no need to be overly anxious. Typically, the beginner's world they would enter was relatively safe, with few cases of player deaths. However, exceptions existed, and he mentioned a catastrophic incident known as Nightmare Village, where an entire class of 40 beginners vanished without a trace. The principal's emotional manipulation left the students scared and confused, their confidence shaken. He continued to swing their emotions before finally advising them to prepare themselves, as once the stopwatch reached 0, they would immediately enter the other world. The countdown began, and within seconds, the stopwatch beeped loudly, signaling the beginning of the beginner's training. Dark streams of energy engulfed all the students, and in an instant, they were transported to another world for their test. As the students regained their senses and tried to comprehend their surroundings, they observed that the village appeared ordinary and peaceful. Kiau, however, continued to survey his surroundings, while Ma Fei boastfully reassured everyone, claiming he would defeat all opponents and protect them. However, despite the calm and tranquil appearance of the world, an eerie and gloomy atmosphere persisted, instilling a sense of unease. The village emanated a funereal silence, and the sign, Nightmare Village, hung ominously, indicating that this would not be a typical beginner's training but a living nightmare. However, Ma Fei remained oblivious to these details, persistently urging the students to follow him, promising them success. Despite Kiau's status as a necromancer, Ma Fei remained convinced that he alone was the most suitable candidate to be the class leader. He firmly believed that he was the strongest individual among all his classmates. Meanwhile, Kiau pondered the nature of this peculiar beginner's world and wondered why there were no system prompts or notifications. Suddenly, an enigmatic elderly man emerged from the shadows, capturing the attention of all the students. He remarked, "What a pity, how young and innocent you all are." Interestingly, his appearance contradicted his words, and he seemed to find amusement in the situation. Ma Fei instinctively assumed a fighting stance and demanded to know the stranger's identity. Kiau, on the other hand, showed more courtesy and politely inquired about the man's statement. However, the old man appeared to ignore their questions and solemnly declared, "Welcome to Nightmare Village." Just as he spoke, thunder rumbled and lightning illuminated the sky, accompanied by a system notification that appeared before each student. The notification welcomed them to the beginner training in Nightmare Village, within S-rank difficulty level. Although the beginner's training difficulty was separate from other worlds, the S-rank training world posed a challenge comparable to a normal ranked world. To complete this training, they had to escape the village alive and uncover its secret. The students, terrified upon hearing they were in Nightmare Village, the same place where 40 people had perished without anyone successfully completing the training, struggled to comprehend this information. Overwhelmed by fear, some students decided to make a desperate attempt to escape, rushing towards the village gates, proclaiming their desire to return home and refusing to participate in the games any longer. Ma Fei attempted to persuade them to calm down, reassuring everyone that he would protect them and led them out of Nightmare Village. Kiau paid little attention to Ma Fei's exclamations and focused on recalling their teachings. He realized that to succeed in this E-rank world, the students needed to be at least at the early stage level, while they were all still at the disciples level. Under these circumstances, he couldn't fathom how they were expected to overcome the challenges. The levels in this other world were categorized into several stages: disciple, early stage, middle stage, and late stage, with 2 additional stages, king and godly, reserved for exceptionally talented students with rare roles and abilities. To the astonishment of the students attempting to flee, they were met with an invisible barrier that forcefully repelled them when they approached the gate. Despite the obviousness of this phenomenon, they couldn't comprehend why it was happening and what it meant. Observing their futile yet persistent efforts, the old man advised them to cease their attempts, as once they entered Nightmare Village, escape would be impossible. Upon hearing this, panic gripped nearly all the students. A bloody, imperceptible wall blocked their path to freedom, causing them to wail in terror, convinced that their fate was sealed and that they would perish with no hope of salvation. One student, hailing from a wealthy family, was horrified by this prospect. Determined not to meet such a fate, he refused to accept his impending doom. Meanwhile, Ma Fei's attempts to rally the students and instill trust in his ability to rescue them grew increasingly futile. In contrast, Kiau calmly contemplated their predicament. It was no wonder the previous group had been wiped out upon entering the village. The mission to uncover the secret at the core of Nightmare Village seemed insurmountable for beginners. However, Despite the circumstances, it appeared the enigmatic old man held no ill intentions and was not their enemy. Walking amidst the paralyzed students, he assured them not to overly fret about their fate, suggesting that since they were already there, they should make themselves as comfortable as possible. Smugly thinking he understood everything, Ma Fei questioned whether the old man wanted them to relax and face the forthcoming dangers and trials with confidence. However, the old man responded with a gloomy gaze, as if Ma Fei were a fool, clarifying that he meant they should relax and accept the fact that they would all perish in Nightmare Village. The terrified students were dumbfounded by this revelation, as their worst fears and nightmares were materializing before their eyes. Finally growing tired of toying with and frightening them, the old man decided to introduce himself. He revealed that he was the head of Nightmare Village, named Wagon, and announced that there were 2 strict requirements to live in the village. Firstly, they could inhabit any of the vacant houses, but under no circumstances they were not to touch the black stones above their doors. At first glance, it appeared to be a straightforward set of requirements. The second requirement stated that they must return to their homes before nightfall, securely shutting all windows and doors, and never opening them, regardless of the circumstances. Kiau immediately had a question and directed it to the village head, inquiring about the reason they couldn't leave their houses after dark. However, the village head responded gloomily, stating that Kiau would understand for himself once night fell. After the village had explained everything to them, some time passed, and evening arrived. Taking Wagon's advice to heart, the students agreed to search for vacant houses to seek refuge in. To facilitate this, they divided into 4 groups, each consisting of 11 individuals. Upon finding an empty house, Kiau's group noticed the peculiar black stones above the door. However, with nightfall rapidly approaching, they had little time to examine them closely. They hurriedly entered the house, tightly shutting the door behind them for safety. Making their way to the 2nd floor, they decided to rest there for the night. Once everyone settled into their respective places, a familiar girl, who had previously displayed healing abilities, approached Kiau. Utilizing her charms, she attempted to convince him to prioritize her protection, emphasizing her skills as a healer and her ability to restore his health points. Kiau seemed disinterested and paid her little attention. However, this behavior infuriated another girl in the group, a paladin by specialization. She approached them and reproached Zhao Ziyu, expressing her disapproval of her shameless conduct, especially with so many classmates observing. Zhao Ziyu was indignant by such brazen accusations and retorted that it was none of her business if she was fine with it. The paladin persisted, questioning whether Zhao Ziyu believed she should be proud of having prominent breasts. In response, Zhao Ziyu remarked that it was far better than having nothing at all. Witnessing the escalating argument, Kiau felt uncomfortable and unsure of how to intervene. Consequently, he chose to remain silent. Su, feeling resentful, retorted that Zhao Ziyu only possessed such advantages because she was overweight. Suddenly, our protagonist noticed one of the students heading towards the window as if mesmerized. It seemed that he saw something there that the others didn't. Despite their attempts, they couldn't stop him. In the next moment, tears of joy filled his eyes as he exclaimed, "Granny! Granny, I missed you so much." The student believed he could see his grandmother standing right outside the window. She even called him by name and asked for his help, mentioning how cold and scary it was outside. Seeing his hesitation, she asked him to open the window so she could hug him. Overwhelmed with emotion, the student agreed and promised to open the window right away. However, as the window opened, Kiau shouted at him to stop, realizing that the person outside was not his grandmother. But it was too late. The so-called grandmother's appearance changed, and a gloating smirk appeared on her face as she burst into the room and attacked the gullible student. In horror, the student realized his mistake and asked her what she was doing. Fortunately, Yang Zandi reacted swiftly and used a spell to bind the creature, preventing it from entering their home. Sensing the monster's power, Yang Zandi urged his companions to act quickly, knowing he couldn't hold it back for long. The monster broke free from the spell but was delayed enough for the student who had led it into escape. It turned out to be a level 3 nightmare monster with 50 health points and formidable strength. The students were shocked by the monster's strength, questioning why even the weakest monsters in this village were so powerful. The nightmare wasted no time and lunged at Yang Zandi, who warned it not to come closer, using humor to distract it. Su came to Yang Zandi's aid, creating a shield to protect him, although it drained her own health. While safeguarding Yang Zandi, Zhu took charge and issued a series of commands to her classmates. She urged Yang Zandi to retreat, instructed Zhao Ziyu to heal her, and tasked Kiau Yu with summoning undead creatures to restrain the nightmare monster. Her classmates promptly responded to her directives. Zhao Ziyu employed her healing magic, casting a spell on Zhou and simultaneously restoring 10 health points to her. Zhu believed that with everyone working together, defeating the monster should not be too difficult. She decided to stall the creature while waiting for Kiau Yu to summon the undead. However, to her surprise, instead of summoning the undead, Kiau Yu charged at the monster, wielding his Necromancer's staff. Yang Zandi exclaimed that Kiau Yu was not using the staff correctly and warned him that if the monster got too close, he would be in immediate danger. Despite the warning, Kiau Yu delivered a decisive blow to the monster, inflicting 50 points of damage and defeating it. Everyone around froze in surprise, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The nightmare vanished into thin air, leaving behind remnants of its spirit that flew out of the window. A glowing darkness remained on the floor. The other students were bewildered, questioning how a nightmare with 50 health points could be defeated so swiftly. They wondered if all necromancers fought in this manner, as it deviated from their preconceived notions about necromancy. After regaining their composure, they gathered around the remains of the nightmare. To their astonishment, it had transformed into a black stone that was slowly evaporating. The girls noticed that the symbol on the stone matched those above the doors of their houses. Since both the stone and the nightmare were from the nightmare village, it seemed less peculiar. Meanwhile, Kiau Yu couldn't understand what had transpired and suspected it might be a game bug. He was perplexed as to why he hadn't received any skill points despite killing the nightmare with a melee attack. Zhu noticed his confusion and inquired if he had observed anything unusual. Kiau Yu, fixated on the evaporating stone, dismissed it as nothing, likely overthinking the situation. The following day, as the groups left their houses, the students from the protagonist group expressed gratitude for being in the company of Chu and Zhu the previous night. They admired their strength and couldn't shake off the chills when recalling the nightmare monster. Ma Fei keenly listened to their conversations, particularly noting their belief that sticking close to Kiau Yu was the right course of action due to his incredible strength and ability to dispatch nightmares effortlessly. They also praised Zhu for her use of a shield to block the nightmare's attacks, finding her actions impressive. Ma couldn't help but think that if he were there, he would never allow a girl, especially one who appeared delicate like Zhu, to take the brunt of the damage. He believed it wasn't something a truly courageous person would do, hiding behind a girl's protection. He was convinced that he could defeat all the nightmares with a single strike, overflowing with self-confidence and arrogance. Lost in his thoughts, he unintentionally swung his sword as if engaging in a morning workout. The protagonist noticed this and commended Ma's diligence, with Yang Shangdi agreeing, citing it as the expected behavior of a class president who surpassed many others. Ma merely coughed awkwardly and glanced around, hoping no one had witnessed his actions. He attempted to justify himself, claiming he had merely practiced for a brief moment. When he saw Zhu, he decided to act and entice her to join his group, offering her shelter for the night, assuring her that he would handle the nightmares alone without her assistance. However, Zhu resented his proposition, as her role was to tank and she questioned who would fulfill that role if she didn't. She wondered if he genuinely wanted to take on that responsibility. Ma failed to understand why Zhu was indignant and attempted to explain that he believed he could handle the nightmares single-handedly, without relying on others. This only served to further infuriate Zhu, who reminded him that their teacher had emphasized the importance of working together during their training. She added that he couldn't always expect to do everything on his own and should learn from Kiau Yu's example. Suddenly, a cry rang out, "Kill them all!" All the students swiftly turned to see what was happening. The entire population of the village was charging towards them, armed with whatever they could find. The village chief led them, commanding them to capture and tie up the students, intending to burn away their sins in the fire. He ordered them to kill anyone who resisted. His rage seemed genuine, and something significant must have transpired overnight to cause such a drastic change in his attitude towards the students. Ma Fei stepped forward immediately, determined to resolve the situation peacefully. He believed that there must be some kind of misunderstanding, so he decided to approach the village headman to discuss it. However, his hopes were shattered when the headman confidently denied any misunderstanding, stating that the students should be aware of their actions from the previous night. Kiau Yu, while assessing the imminent danger, noticed that the number and age of the armed villagers matched that of the students. This sparked some thoughts in his mind, although he didn't have concrete evidence yet. Finally, Ma realized what the headman was referring to and asked if he meant that they had killed the protective spirit of the nightmare village, whom he called a creature. In response, the headman harshly silenced him, explaining that the protective spirit was not a monster but a guardian of the village. By breaking the rules of the village, they had provoked the protective spirit's wrath, causing the entire village to suffer alongside them. The headman declared that those responsible must pay for their sins with 1,000 deaths. In that moment, Ma came up with an idea to make amends. He respectfully asked the headman if there was a way to save the protective spirit if it had been accidentally killed. The headman confirmed that there was a way, but it wouldn't be easy. The person who angered the protective spirit would have to spend the night outside their house, a task that seemed risky considering the unknown dangers lurking in the night. Ma thought it would be suicide to volunteer for such a task. However, the protagonist bravely stepped forward and declared that he was the one who killed the protective spirit, willing to face the consequences. Even Ma was surprised by the protagonist's courage and questioned if he had lost his mind. He tried to downplay the situation, apologizing for his slow-witted classmates' words and suggesting that the headman shouldn't pay attention to him. On the other hand, assured the headman that the protagonist hadn't lost his mind and explained that he had a plan that might help them all escape the cursed world. The headman decided to give it a try and ordered the protagonist to be locked up. He was immediately chained to a wooden cross in the village square. The other students approached him, curious about his claim to have found a way to escape the nightmare village. The protagonist confidently stated that it could be true and that he would test his theory that night. As the night fell, a gloomy greenish mist enveloped the village, and a nightmare appeared on a nearby rooftop, ready to attack. The protagonist smiled, but before the nightmare could reach him, it was stopped by sand magic controlled by Yang Shangdi, who urged the protagonist to act quickly. Ma, wielding his sword, arrogantly proclaimed his ability to defeat all the monsters. However, his confidence turned to bewilderment as the monster easily broke through the spell. After realizing the true strength of the monster, Ma Fei felt a twinge of fear and couldn't comprehend how Kiau Yu managed to defeat such a formidable creature. However, he had no time to hesitate. He convinced himself that if Kiau Yu could do it, he could too. Filled with firm confidence, Ma Fei rushed towards the enemy. As he approached the nightmare, he delivered a powerful strike that broke through its defenses, dealing only 5 points of damage. While Ma Fei fought the monster, Kiau Yu was approached by Zhao Ziyu and Sha Yu, who had come to help him. They attempted to untie the chains binding the protagonist, but Ma Fei was still engaged in battle and couldn't lend them his sword at that moment. However, to their surprise, the protagonist easily broke free from the chains on his own. This made the girls wonder if he truly possessed necromantic abilities. Meanwhile, Ma Fei started to lose his advantage against the monster and began to retreat. Sha Yu called for Zhao Ziyu to heal him while activating her shield, but Ma Fei insisted on defeating the monster by himself, believing that real heroes were forged in true battles, and scars were marks of pride. The others advised Ma Fei to aim for the nightmare's head, believing it to be its weak point based on Kiau Yu's previous strike. Ma Fei couldn't help but berate himself for not considering the situation earlier. While engaged in battle with the nightmare, Ma Fei taunted Kiau Yu, asking if he was now scared of being overshadowed. He pointed out that Kiau Yu relied on his teammates to confront the nightmare, whereas Ma Fei only needed his sword. However, Kiau Yu responded by stating that the nightmare's weak spot was not its head. With his sword at the ready, Ma Fei confidently exclaimed for everyone to watch him closely. He swiftly dashed towards the monster, delivering multiple slashes aimed at its head. Unfortunately, his attacks only managed to inflict a mere 10 points of damage to the nightmare. Confusion washed over Ma Fei as he realized the monster was still alive. He couldn't help but express his disbelief, mentioning that it should have been a one-shot defeat. He questioned the girls if the weak point was truly the head. Sha Yu couldn't comprehend what was happening either, as Kiau Yu had previously finished off the monster with a single blow. Yang Shangdi, however, deduced the problem and informed Ma Fei that he simply wasn't as skilled as Kiau Yu. These words angered Ma Fei, as he couldn't accept being a swordsman weaker than a necromancer. He was also furious that they were telling him to retreat and trust Kiau Yu, as he believed he would die if he received even a single blow. Despite their advice, Ma Fei refused to retreat and stood defiantly with his sword, activating his defense-breaking strike ability. He swung his sword, unleashing a barrage of wind blades that inflicted a total of 30 points of damage on the monster. With only 5 points of health remaining, Ma Fei was determined to deliver the final blow and prove himself. However, before he could do so, Kiau Yu's staff strike finished off the monster. This turn of events both shocked and angered Ma Fei, as all his efforts seemed in vain. He shouted at Kiau Yu in frustration and resentment, questioning how he could perform such an act. Despite Ma Fei's irritation, Kiau Yu praised him for his contribution and focused on examining the black crystal in his hand. Suddenly, the black crystal began to disappear. In the midst of their heated exchange, 2 more nightmares appeared, swiftly approaching them. This unexpected development caught them off guard, leaving them uncertain of their ability to withstand the onslaught of 2 monsters. However, Kiau Yu swiftly called for everyone to retreat inside and avoid engaging with the nightmares. He had an idea on how they could pass the mission. Without hesitation, he slammed the door of the nearby house shut, blocking the path of the 2 monsters. Our heroes found themselves inside a room, where Zhu immediately questioned the protagonist about his idea to pass the test. In response, he cryptically stated that they would find out the next day and advised everyone to trust him when the time came. The following morning, the villagers began berating our heroes, accusing them of killing another spirit despite being given a chance to redeem themselves. The village head vehemently declared that they were all doomed and destined for hell. He affirmed that regardless of what they said, they would all meet their demise, as he was determined to save his village. Kiau Yu questioned the legitimacy of the village head's claim to leadership, infuriating him further. The village head dismissed Kiau Yu's question as nonsense, asserting that his family had lived there for generations. He accused the protagonist of stalling for time, believing that their fate was sealed. In response, our protagonist stated that it was time to reveal the truth behind Nightmare Village. He declared that there was only one truth: each and every villager was not an original inhabitant of Nightmare Village. The villagers were taken aback by this revelation and asked if it was truly the case that they were trapped in a fantasy realm and unable to leave. The village head laughed off the idea, accusing Kiau Yu of fabricating stories. He refused to accept Kiau Yu's words, claiming that he was simply afraid of death and that there was no evidence to support the claims. Confidently, our protagonist insisted that he did have evidence and revealed the black crystal. The village head expressed outrage, stating that removing the black crystal from its place warranted 10,000 deaths. However, it turned out that not only our protagonist possessed a black crystal, but also his 4 classmates. The village head was shocked to learn this, as the black crystal was meant to protect them from nighttime attacks. He mentioned that tampering with the black crystal would incur heavenly punishment from the Lord. Kiau Yu explained that the black crystal was not a protective stone, but rather the core of the fantasy realm, and that by shattering the crystals, cracks would appear in the realm. At that moment, they all threw the black crystals to the ground, causing them to shatter. A massive crack opened in the sky, and suddenly, the villagers' heads began to ache as they regained their memories from before they entered Nightmare Village. They remembered their excitement before the test and the subsequent nightmare attacks. They recalled transforming into villagers and losing their memories, with their class monitor assuming the role of the village head. As the realm shattered, they remembered everything. A system message appeared, stating that a player had discovered the secret at the core of Nightmare Village and successfully awakened its villagers. Another system message announced that mission rewards would be given based on individual ratings. The protagonist class erupted in cheers, having passed the beginner's test. The trapped students began to return to their original world, expressing gratitude to our protagonist party. Yang Zongdi praised Kiau Yu for finding the way to pass, while Ma Fei humbled himself and commended our hero, acknowledging his intelligence. Kiau Yu urged them to discuss everything further once they returned. However, to their surprise, all 5 of them remained in the realm, confused as to why. Zhou questioned why they were still there, and a system message appeared, congratulating all 5 of them for destroying the Black Nightmare Stone. They were given a new mission to retrieve the Hearts of Nightmares. Our protagonist confidently awaited their next journey, as they faced the E-rank difficulty mission. The system displayed their status, showing that their strength had increased to 101, now with a powerful buff doubling it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.